welcome to today's webinar. As you already know, I am Chelsea Smith, Learning and Development Specialist here at Action Benefits. And today we are going to spend some time talking about how to combat those negative reviews you may or may not, hopefully may not, but if you have, how you can combat those to spin them into something positive for you and your business. By the end of the session, you should be able to discuss how bad reviews affect your business, how to pen public responses that benefit your business, how to navigate private responses to reviews, because you don't want to be going around fixing all those problems after the fact, right? How to formulate an action after addressing those negative reviews, and how to encourage positive reviews. So we've got a lot going on today. We can get through this probably in about a half hour. Why do bad reviews even matter to your business? If you're doing such a great job and the day in, day out, why would one bad review on, say, Google Business actually even affect what goes on in your office, right? So according to brightlocal.com, a research firm that talks about these kind of things, I have 3 stats for you that might kind of surprise you a little bit and take you into why we might be doing some of the things that we're doing here today. So 94% of consumers say a bad review convinced them to avoid a business. That's a lot. Okay, then 57% of consumers will only use a business if it has 4 or more stars. And then 73% of consumers are more likely to trust a business if they have positive reviews. So while all 3 of those facts might say something a little bit different to you, they all kind of are illustrating the same inherent problem, right? So reviews in general can change the way that the public views your business and can really spin negative reviews, and those negative reviews can really spin your business for the worse if the person has a believable review that gets a lot of traction, right? But that fact in the center here does also tell us that if a business has good reviews, that also can sway a consumer in the other direction and convince them to come over to your side and use you as their insurance agent. So yes, reviews do matter. They may not be the sole factor, but for someone who doesn't know you yet, and they're getting to know you through these reviews, what the average person who is giving those reviews has to say will matter a lot, right? Depending on what person they're going to choose to satisfy their health insurance needs. Are bad reviews preventable? To an extent they are, right? And we already know as good business agents how to keep from getting those bad reviews, giving that impeccable service, being available, being friendly, providing options, being active listeners. All of those things contribute to making sure that those bad reviews don't pop up in the first place, right? But like many things in life, negative reviews are sort of going to be inevitable at some point. You are not going to please 100% of the people 100% of the time, as my grandma used to say to me. There are some small tips I can give you to preventing bad reviews in the first place, which I bet many of you already know a lot of these. But see, here are some of the ones you might not have thought of before. Or maybe it's a good idea to like mentally refresh yourself every phone call or every time you get involved with a new client, what their mindset is going to be in comparison to yours. That it sometimes can be difficult to remember what it's like to be a client, right? So I like to think of it as a put the mask on yourself before helping others level of thought. And keeping in mind, there is literally no such thing as a perfect business, no such thing as the perfect client, no such thing as the perfect agent. You cannot and will not please everyone. But so long as you have that public forum out there, someone is going to go out there and either say wonderful things about you or besmirch you, depending on what their experience was with you. And it's hard. It's hard to not take those reviews personally either way. And I mean, obviously, of course, those positive reviews feel great and it's great to take those personally, right? But it's also hard not to take those negative reviews personally as well. So where do bad reviews come from? If we talk about a case study of bad reviews, we can say that there's really 3 main points where a person will feel motivated enough to write one of these bad reviews about you. So according to Trustpilot and a few other reports that I had read doing research for this webinar, there are about 5 areas that are most likely to spark a bad review in the customer experience. But thankfully, there's 2 of them that don't really apply to us as insurance agents. Unsatisfactory customer experiences, bad experiences, poor product performance, and price issues. Those are the three that really are going to apply to us as agents. But about 50% of negative reviews touch on that first point here, that bad experiences point, the customer experience point. This is a good and a bad thing for us as agents, really, because we have 100% control over the experience that our customer has with us. We don't have tons of control over the prices of the products that we sell. We can't control what those products cover. We can't control the networks. There's so much we can't control about our products that we sell in comparison to some other businesses. But we have 100% control and focus over that customer experience. And so much of our business really does revolve around that customer experience, right? We might once in a while have to feel the customer service issue where the client had a bad experience with the provider or something like that, and they might get confused and call us. But hopefully they can understand that that is not you who has created that problem for them. You didn't choose the formula, or you didn't choose the network, so on and so forth. But it does give you an opportunity to be the hero for that client, right? And even if you didn't create the problem, you can help them find ways to solve it. Product performance and price are a little different for us than some other small businesses because, like I said before, we don't create the product and we don't create the prices, right? Which can be a blessing. We can pass that off sometimes and say, well, that's just the way such and such carrier prices their products, right? But when it comes to combating a negative review, that can be really tricky. While it might seem really easy at this point to just be like, well, I don't set the price. It is what it is. Just a client's not going to want to hear that, right? That doesn't solve their problem. So it's at best, you'll seem out of touch if you're going to give a response like that online for the world to see, and can become really uncaring and callous sounding at worst. And then your future potential clients are going to go somewhere where that agent seems more caring and like they're more willing to help you through that process, right? And I bet if you were to give them a response like, well, I don't set the prices, it's too bad, they're going to find a new agent really quick, right? So instead of doubling down on something that you can't do anything about, focus on the things you can do something about. And don't place the blame solely on the carrier. Give yourself some room to work with that person and find what they may or may not want. So this list is not all encompassing by any stretch of the imagination, but these are some of the places that you might look if you are finding yourself getting dragged online, right? If you're finding that you're getting some negative reviews, these are where you can look. And some of these places you might find them at are going to not require you to make an account like Yelp. Like you can get a review on yelp.com and you did not create that account. Facebook, Google Business, you yourself are creating those accounts, so you will have a lot of control over what you can do when you get those reviews, like on the back end. We'll talk a little bit about that more later on in our show, but these are the places that you can kind of predict you can get bad reviews at. If I were to pinpoint the one that is kind of most valuable or where you want to spend the most time fielding, is definitely Google Business, right? Because if someone Googles your business, that's what's going to come up, right? Is your Google Business page. The very first thing, if you Google Action Benefits, right? Our Google Business page is what comes up. So we're going to start with the bad review coming into your inbox from your Google Business, let's say. The first thing is don't panic, right? Don't take it personally. Don't get upset. If that happens, because you're a human being, absolutely okay. Give yourself a minute, take a deep breath, then come back to it, right? I'm going to start, like I said, on these internet reviews simply because they kind of precurse what you would do if someone were to have called or to come in person to give you a negative review. So let's start with those. And then if you happen to get one that doesn't, that, is a phone call or what have you, you can just jump in at the phone call portion because we will end up eventually calling this person. The first thing to do is don't ignore it, right? Nobody likes to feel ignored, and that feeling is contagious if it's left public. It's kind of my overarching thought I'd like you to leave with this slide here today. It'll be tempting to delete that voicemail, ignore that comment, throw that, report it, whatever. And there might be a time and a place to report a bad review. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But most of the time, your reviews are going to be, you know, legitimate, right? So let's say for our extensive purposes right now, let's say we're getting a legitimate bad review, right? So if you ignore it and you just let it hang there on your Google Business account, that silence is going to speak volumes for any future client who Googles you and sees that negative review. If you leave it unresolved, it's going to look like you don't care. Not only for that customer, that individual that wrote that review, but for anybody else who stumbles upon that website on your Google Business account or your Yelp account, and it's just hanging there in cyberspace, right? That person who left that review is now going to tell everyone they know, everyone that is looking for health insurance, not to come see you because they didn't solve their need, or you didn't solve their need, excuse me. And they will assume that every customer gets that experience with you, right? And then, like I said, meanwhile, the strangers on the internet who are coming to look at your business are seeing that comment, collecting dust, and they're thinking, ugh, like they're just not responsive over there at that business, at that agency. I'd like to go to one that is going to be responsive to my needs and not ignore me when the going gets tough, right? 45% of people who see a negative review are more likely to forgive that review if the business responds to it. And honestly, personally, I kind of agree. I personally agree with this one. Like I said before, I have no expectation that any business of mine that I frequent is 100% perfect all the time. But I do have an expectation that they will take care of business if that experience goes sour for that customer, right? So again, we'll talk later on in the presentation about how to spin that review in your favor. But for now, that's just our end goal. That's our ending mindset here is we see this bad review, we take it in, and then we think, okay, how can I spin this in a way where it makes the best situation out of this negative, right? At the very least, if you address the comment, both the reviewer and those who are viewing this negative review will at least see that you said something about it, and you at least demonstrate that you cared, right? That's the base minimum. There's no harm in establishing that base minimum of, hey, I care about my clients and I at least responded, right? Okay, so what do we include in that response? Let's take a look. Give me 1 second to. Okay, so when you get a bad review online on your Google business page, these can be particularly damaging, right? Others will, like we said before, see those reviews and they can be taken as gospel. But it's not possible, at least on Google Business, to delete those bad reviews. Again, you can report them. We'll talk about it later. You can't delete them. And that would look kind of shady, to be honest, because to be honest, if you could delete them, I would bet my bottom dollar that anyone who was upset enough in the first place to leave that negative review, if you went and deleted it, I bet that person's going to come back and tell the world that you deleted their bad review, that you were trying to sweep under the rug their problems. Don't do it. It's going to feel tempting. Don't do it. Don't report reviews that are earnest, right? And don't try to sweep them under the rug. According to Review Tracker, 53% of consumers do expect the business to respond to negative reviews and do so within 7 days of the review. Waiting too long will make it seem like you're just doing it to like kind of like save face or just for your own benefit. Because I think especially the younger crowd, they know some of this stuff. They know that there's an expectation for you to address these bad reviews. So if you do so like months later, they're gonna think, ew, like you had no actual desire to solve the problem for this person. You just wanted to give yourself a little extra attention. The one and only time that I did write a negative review personally for a Google business page, the owner wrote back to me 3 months later. It was like, oh, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, no, it was 3 months ago. I solved my problem myself. Like I won't come back to you because you didn't care. Like why would I come back to you? But if you say something promptly enough, then there's time to solve that problem for them. They're going to want to come back to you because you solved their problem. You have a chance to repair this damaged relationship, right? So instead of destroying the evidence, use it as an opportunity to show competence with your customers, particularly those who might not be getting everything they want in a bag of chips out of their health insurance policy, right? So when the review is public and when your response is going to be public, here's what you do. You only need to do three things really quick, right? You need to thank the client for their concerns, express your own concerns back to them. Notice how I didn't say apologize for anything. We'll get to that in a second. And then give an opportunity to have a dialogue with that consumer. So my example version here is would be something kind of like this. So thank you for letting us know about this problem you had. Anytime our clients are dissatisfied, whether it be with our service or our products, we want to make it right for you. Please give me a call so we can work this out. Right? So this example public acknowledgement, again, this is not what you would say on the phone. This is just what you would say if you had a negative review that the world is going to see. This public acknowledgement of the negative review does the three things it needs. It addresses that, yes, there was a problem. It communicates that you were concerned about the problem, and then puts the onus back on the customer to contact you to get a resolution going. You don't want to come off as aggressive and call them unprompted. You don't want to just ring them up right after they leave that negative review. They're not expecting that, and that's kind of shocking to them, right? Put yourselves in their shoes. It would be a little weird to get that phone call, maybe to them. Notice how I didn't say things like, I'm sorry you felt that way. If you word it that way, it kind of sounds like you're sidestepping the responsibility, like as if their feelings aren't validated by what you're saying, by what they said, or giving an excuse for why something might be the way it was, or why that decision might have been made behind closed doors, right? Well, you refuse to tell me about your medication, so of course I'm not going to know what plan fits best for you if you don't tell me what medications you take. So like, you should have just, no, don't get into that with them, especially in public where people are going to see it. Don't do that. Don't even say something like, we're working on doing better with this stuff. We are working how we made these that's not for the public to see. That's not for the public to know, right? You didn't hear the word sorry in any of this message. Unless there is something that 100% absolutely you gut feel that you did wrong and there's nothing that you can do to solve it, and like it was like you personally, and I still don't, maybe, but I really don't recommend apologizing for things, because then everyone is going to, it feels guilt. It gives guilt, right? The people who are reading that review later are going to assume that, yeah, you were wrong, even if you weren't. And it feels like you're covering up for something, right? If there is an apology that needs to be given, give it to that person individually, not while you talk to them about it later, not in public, because again, it's going to go way farther with that individual, come off more sincere, more empathetic if it comes directly from you with your voice to that person with their ears than it would for a public forum where your tone can be misconstrued very, very easily, right? And again, I feel like I can never say this enough. Do not hash it out publicly. Don't do it. The solution is not for everyone to look at, right? And even so, even if there's no issue that comes from the solution, and the solution is just out there for the world to see, right? Maybe you get another client somewhere and they see that solution and they go, well, can't you do that for me? No, you're a different person, right? Like, so now you just open yourself up for more drama. Don't do it. Once you have put that comment out there, now you just sit back and wait for that phone call, right? If the person continues to respond to you virtually, like if they respond to your comment or if they leave another review, gently remind them of your phone number that you provided to them one more time, and that's it. Don't respond. Don't get involved further. My dad used to say they'll drag you down and beat you with experience, right? Like don't get down there with them. Just keep leaving the phone number, keep saying I'm happy to talk to you about it. And then don't spam them over and over and over. Leave it as it is. If they really want a resolution, they're going to call you. So contacting your target reviewer before they contact you can work for or against you. In the research that I did, most of them kind of leaned towards not doing it. But there were a couple that said there might be a little bit of positive to it. I would very be very targeted and mindful if I was going to contact through email a client before they contacted me. If you know the person really well and have dealt with them before and dealt with them often and know for a fact that human being would appreciate you starting that conversation, then go for it. In my personal opinion, that client probably wouldn't have left a negative review on you then. They probably would have contacted you individually and talked it out that way. So you would have skipped this entire step. But that's just me. Some people, and on an anecdotal level, and in a couple of the research pieces I did, I went through, swear by this tactic and claim it really hones in on the client's need for quick and effective solutions. We'll talk about what clients expect out of a solution in a minute, but some agents really feel that it does them a benefit to have that quickness in their solution response, right? And part of their tactic is, oh, I send the email first because I seem like I'm on top of things. If that's really your shtick and what you think is going to work for you, I don't want to tell you to not do something that you already think works, but generally the evidence tends to lean towards waiting for that client to get to you. That gives them some time to kind of relax about it, and gives you time to formulate a response that best fits what you would like to do for your business, right? Think to yourself what else you could do between the public reply to the comment and the phone call to ensure that that conversation you're going to have with this client will go smoothly once that phone call does go through. In a previous lifetime, I did work a customer service management position in college, where negative reviews was essentially my job to deal with. So this particular topic is kind of near and dear to me. They weren't online back then, but same difference, right? So this person said, ask around the office about the experience that person might have had. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so let's say you have an office of 3 people, and you don't remember having this experience with this client. It's probably a really good idea to go to whoever it was that did have that experience and get their side of the story. I would not go then tell the client like, well, so-and-so said this, and no, that's not what we're doing. But asking them like, hey, what really happened here? And how did the person, like, what is the story? So that way you have as much context as possible in order to make a good decision and have a great conversation with that client once they do give you a ring. I love that. Writing stuff down, good call as well. And then my solution, my go-to thing when I took phone calls, complaints at my previous life's job, I tended to have a suggested solution on deck whenever possible. If the phone call, I'd have the front desk answer the call for me, and they would say, hey, so-and-so has this problem. I always would have a Rolodex of solutions in my head that could possibly work for that client based on the solution or the issue that was being presented to me. And then I could go through them so that way the conversation remained focused on solutions, right? All right, so act 2 of the negative review journey is the dialogue. If your complaint starts on the phone, then this is where you're going to start. You're going to skip the whole putting it on the internet thing, but this is where you would have a actual conversation with that person. So at this point in our story, the ball has been put into the client's court, right? You gave them the opportunity to call back and talk about the issue, and this works in our favor for in a couple of different ways, because then it gives us time to prepare for that potential phone call. Honestly, a lot of the time the problem will resolve itself at this point. Like I said, the one and only time I had a bad experience and wrote a review on Google, like I didn't call the person back. They invited me to, and I didn't want to have that conversation. A lot of the times, that's going to be the case, right? The person's not going to call back. But if they do, these are the things you are going to want to do if you really think that person's going to call back, or even if you're just to be prepared in case this person does call back, or if this might be a problem that might occur more than once with another client somewhere down the road, you would have a solution in your back pocket, right? So like we just talked about before, the very first thing that I would do is get the whole story, right? talk to anybody in your agency that might have interacted with this person and hear their interpretation of the story. As my dad would tell me as a kid, there are three sides to every story. One side's version, the other side's version, and the truth, which is somewhere in the middle, right? So you can get the details on how this person might interact with you on the phone or how that person might want the problem to be resolved. And again, this is not to throw details back at the customer and go, well, you didn't say. No, we're not doing that. Can give you more insight too on what happened in order to maybe keep this process from happening again. Maybe you notice after going backwards that, oh, maybe it's not the best idea to set up a system where an email needs to be forwarded multiple times, because if that email doesn't make it to the right person, then it creates a holdup or whatever. You can then solve the problem in the future before it even starts. So number two would be to plan out some points in advance that you might want to make to this client. This phone call could get stressful, or you might not have all the time in the world to speak with this client. This can give you something to fall back on if you're drawing a blank or need a way to stop talking in circles. For me, I always tend to fall back on a rule or a policy when I used to take calls like this. So that way there was a stopping point that I could reach, right? Because again, a lot of this phone call you're going to come to find will be a lot of just listening and feeling empathetic to the person's situation that they aren't happy to be in, which is fine. Like that's going to be part of your skill in this call, is to hear them. But eventually there comes a point where it's not productive anymore to let them continue to harp on something they're unhappy with, and it becomes more beneficial to then present them with that solution, right? So an example might be, hey, we try our best to have at least 3 plan options for a client to leave with, so they can, when we do a quote, but it sounds like you only had one option when you walked out of my office. So let's see if we can't set you up with a few more quotes so we can get you back into a plan that works for you. See, there we go, right? My policy is normally I give you 3 options. My agent only gave you 1 for whatever reason. Let's get you some more options. It's an easy fix, right? And then my third thing to have on deck is a solution in your back pocket. Don't stick to that solution if it doesn't make sense by the end of the phone call, but have something to bring up before your call even starts. That way you don't have to rack your brain with the person on the line for a solution. I've noticed, at least in the years that I spent doing this, sometimes it can be difficult to think of the best solution on the fly. Having a couple again on your back pocket, really helpful. So an example might be, hey, it looks like your application was denied because you didn't have your PCP contact about your chronic condition. Is there any way I can get that information from you now, and I can make that phone call for you? We can get that CSNP set up for you in a really timely fashion. So this doesn't need to be a full-on criminal investigation here. You have clients to serve and selling to do. Give it a short bit of your time, write this info down somewhere, and have it on deck for you when you have this phone call. But we don't need to spend days and days, hours and hours doing this. A couple minutes and you're set. Because this person might not even call back ever, but if they do, you have something to work off of. So what do consumers expect from a response? So scene 2 of act 2, right? The phone rings and that person's on the line. They will expect you to have these 3 things for them in no particular order by the end of this phone call. These are research based here. So they expect you to fix their problem, obviously. They expect you to quickly fix their problem. And they expect you to feel empathy about the problem, right? So the expediency part, you kind of partially solved already, right? Because you quickly answered that online review and you answered the phone, right? You called them back pretty quickly, right? So this part is taken care of partially by itself. But obviously sometimes that won't always apply, as there might not be a black and white solution to the problem, but the person just wants to know that that complaint mattered to you. Which then brings out our next item on the list, which is empathy. This one, in my opinion and in my experience handling customer complaints, is the most important part of the whole phone call, truly. Much of the time, the person just wants to know that you feel for them, and that what you want and that what happened to them isn't what was best, isn't what is representative of your agency, of you as a person. I'm not going to lecture you on how to make someone feel, how to make someone that you feel, excuse me, sorry, I don't want to lecture you on like how you made somebody feel bad and you should feel bad for that. No, we're not going to do that. But the more that you stonewall someone for feeling a certain way about something bad that happened, the more they're going to fight with you, the more they're going to push at you. They just want you to like to feel bad and want to solve the problem for them. Listen to their problem, don't interrupt them. When it's your turn to talk, express a negative feeling about what happened or a neutral sentence at the person that you're still listening. There's thousands out there. Don't make it sound like you're just that sounds frustrating. That's not the way we do business here. It's unfortunate that you experience this. We don't train our people to do that. Can go a really long way. Then the next one is resolving the problem, coming up with a resolution you both can agree on, and we'll get to that momentarily. But I want to focus a little more on the empathy portion of that before we keep going. So at this stage, it is, again, the most important thing you can do to get them back on your side. A little more detail about how to be empathetic is I try to listen to every detail of their story without butting in, like I kind of said before. I also then like to summarize in a broad sense, not every detail of their story, but what their overall problem is, right? Like, so what I'm hearing is you didn't get enough options from me, or it sounds like you didn't have the greatest experience with one of my agents, or whatever it is. Don't sound accusatory. Avoid using you. You had a bad time. I wouldn't. Sounds like this wasn't the best experience, something like that. Avoid using the word you if possible, right? So after you get the story straight with your client, express your earnest feelings about the situation. Nobody likes to feel like a burden when they're trying to get health care, or I'd be so frustrated in your situation too. When said earnestly, and people can pick up on you when you're faking it, right? As long as you're saying it with earnesty, it's going to go a really long way. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Notice I kept it short and sweet. Like I didn't accuse the person of anything. I didn't come back with an excuse. I didn't counterclaim, right? The solution in and of itself, if there was a way that this all could have been prevented in the first place, whatever, that solution is going to become apparent to that client as you solve it with them, right? So if you go through the whole process of, oh, let's add your PCP in, they're going to realize like, oh, next time I need to give them my PCP. This wouldn't have happened, right? You don't need to lecture them. It's not going to help. You're just going to make them more mad. Okay. So this is the part where you find a solution for your client. This might go differently depending on the situation and what the needs are, but here's a general outline of that final stretch of the call. Ask the client what they are looking to see as a solution. Ask them, what is your ideal outcome? Or if price is the driving factor here, can you give me a ballpark to work with, something like that. It shows them that you are driven to a solution. And as you might expect here, you might not be able to always give that solution that they want, right? Especially in health insurance, right? I feel for us as agents here. Our hands are tied a lot, right? There's going to be a lot of times where we might not be able to get them the solution that they want to hear. And hopefully they can understand that is not you who is creating the situation, but giving them the best solution that is available will go leaps and bounds for you as their agent, right? If you can swing it, gently educate the client on what you can't deliver, right? You don't want to focus on the negative. You don't want to focus on, well, I can't do that. Don't do that. But if you do come up with a wall and you have to explain something, a negative, have a positive or a solution, a different solution, so there doesn't seem like don't end up in that situation. Say something like, well, due to open enrollment rules, we can't switch your plan right this second. For individual coverage, you can switch between November 1st and January 16th. That time frame is set by the government. I can't break that rule. But what we can do is look at something for next year. Or the carrier is the one who decides what drugs wind up on formularies. They aren't always the same from carrier to carrier or plan to plan. Don't belittle, don't act like a know-it-all. tone is key. And then finally come to an agreement on what the solution might be for them. I understand that sometimes it has to be an agreement that there's not a solution, right? That sometimes does happen, right? And some people are 100% going to stick to their left field solution that just isn't possible. They're gonna be like, you're gonna call the government, okay. Just don't argue with them anymore. That's okay. I can't help you do that. You can, in my experience, again, drawing back on my customer service experience when that happened, if that person was kept just spitting out their solution that's not possible, I would just, if possible, I would repeat the solutions that I could do. No, I can't force the government to let you change plans. I can't, get you out of this plan that you signed yourself up for. But we can take a look at what makes sense for you in next year, or we can go through your network and see if there's a different doctor that we can hook you up with, right? Just keep repeating those until when that person says, no, you're not, or whatever. And then it's okay to just be done with the conversation. If there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can do for what they want. But most of the time, people do actually want, if they do actually want a solution, they'll follow you towards those solutions to those problems that you are presenting for them. Illusion of choice is a great thing as well. I use this when I was teaching. I use this in customer service. If they feel like they have control of the situation, they're more likely to be on your side. So giving them that we can do this or that, instead of just presenting, this is the only solution. Well, I don't want that. Give them choices whenever possible. And then remember the 3 things that the customer who complains probably wants in their solution, and then cover the bases one more time before you leave. Deliver another sincere display of empathy or apology. Repeat back that solution to them to make sure they understand what's going to happen, and then give them a timeline whenever possible about how that solution is going to be resolved. One more stop and jot while I take a sip of water. What go-to phrases do you use to dissipate, distract, move the conversation, or generally smooth over an awkward encounter? These can be useful even outside of a review. My personal favorite, when I worked in customer service and when I taught, to be honest, I would just go, I hear ya. I hear ya. You're not necessarily telling them they're correct. You're not telling them they're wrong. You're not opening them up to give you more details. Just, I hear ya. Oh my God, this is the worst. I hear ya. Okay, so all's well that ends well. Now that we're on for the last portion of our show, let's talk about what happens after you hang up the phone. So this part's a no-brainer. Just do the thing you said you were going to do. As a way to cover yourself, I would draft an email without sending it, summarizing the conversation very briefly. That way you're saying it in a way that you remember right away, so you don't forget anything. And then if details ever slip your mind, they're still right there in that email. Let them know when the solution comes to fruition, if that's applicable, and invite them to let you know if the solution is there to satisfaction. If they don't answer, you follow up one more time to make sure that they got your email and know that there is a solution to that problem. Then leave it be if they still don't reply to you. So in this particular example, this person needed a new OTC card. Let them know that you ordered it for them. It should be there at their house in a few days. Let me know when you get it, or let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. Tell the office that your solution was, and keep your partners in the loop. That way, if you're meeting with a client and they give a call to your secretary or another agent or your administrator, and they want to know what, have you ordered, has my card been ordered yet? And instead of having to wait back and forth, try to play phone tag with them, so on and so forth, that assistant can just say, oh yeah, they ordered the card for you. It's coming should come in a couple days. That way you seem like you're on the ball, right? Even your whole agency seems like it's on top of the ball, right? This is a good time as well to plug. I would plug and recommend a customer relationship management system in some way, shape, or form. So this way you can take tons of notes about your clients and document things you learn about them through doing business with them or in passing conversations. And that way it's like everyone heard that conversation and can customize their experiences and the services that they give to that client accordingly. So like, for example, if I were to write one about myself personally, if I were my own agent, I might write something like Chelsea tends to not listen to mail, like snail mail. She tends to look at it and be like, oh, and then unless it says important tax documentation enclosed, she'll tend to get rid of it. And but if you email something to her, she checks your email a couple times a day, so she's very likely to see it and and be more responsive to you, right? So then don't waste a stamp on Chelsea, email her, right? Or vice versa. Maybe the client doesn't check their email a lot, so you mail them something or give them a call. Maybe they won't answer the phone. Maybe that they don't like being called during business time. Whatever it is, and then write it down somewhere. I mean, that where everyone in your business can access that information, and then it's like you can just be the best version. Everybody can be the best version of themselves for the service that you're giving. Why not? All right, so let's do a little deeper dive into these reviews, right? So, like we said before, and like I brushed on earlier, um, when you get those negative reviews, the positive, if you get enough positive reviews, they're going to outweigh all those negative reviews, right? And that one negative review is not going to look as bad if you have 5 million other positive reviews, right? So encourage all your clients to leave positive reviews of your business whenever it's appropriate to do so. Add a link to your email signature, include directions on how to do so on your onboarding materials, remind them to do so after you complete a task for them, leave a comment section on your website, give rewards for reviews, do customer shout outs, thank them in person and publicly for the reviews. You don't have to save the replies on reviews only to negative ones, right? Even a sign on your door somewhere saying, leave us a review on Google Business or something like that. All of those can be helpful, right? And again, you can comment on those positive reviews as well. So here's an example on the screen here. Not to toot our own horn, but you might be able to find that somewhere on the internet. And so responding saying, thanks for the review, I really appreciate it. And we really do stand by our agents. That person now feels good, right? Because they liked it. You can, if you click the 3 dots, at least in Google Business, all of this should work in other platforms. I haven't tested it in many other platforms because Google Business is, to me, the bread and butter of reviews. If you click the 3 dots right there, and then this little drop down menu will come up. You hit share review. It will share the review to your business page, and you can copy and paste them to other social media outlets or screen snip them and add them to your website. Don't impersonate the reviewer. Make sure that you're direct quoting, right? Don't impersonate people. Don't commit libel. But make sure to give that person credit for that review. And you can see here as well, this is the spot where you can report a review. A quote, and I'm just going to put word for word what Google says about reporting a review, just so that it's clear. You can report, and I quote, you can report a Google review if it violates the platform's policies, such as by containing hate speech, personal attacks, spam, fake content, or irrelevant content. You can also report reviews that are posted by bots. Okay? So if you wind up in a situation where you feel that you are getting a review that is personally attacking someone and you don't feel comfortable leaving something that negative and that's just vindictive on your profile, just from a safety perspective or something like that, feel free to report it at that point. I just wouldn't report reviews where like, oh, I didn't have a good experience. Like that's a legitimate thing you could have a complaint about. Calling someone ugly or something negative, I would feel free to report. Just don't. I wouldn't report every single negative review that comes to your doorstep. Or report reviews that you think are robots. We'll get to that in a second. So you can come here to edit or delete your own responses over here on the left-hand side in that orange box, but you cannot delete someone else's post. If you had a particularly negative review that that you could fix the problem with, you can choose to delete the post completely or go back and edit the post to include an update regarding how you reached out to them and solved the problem. and how they're super grateful and there is no longer an issue. So you, again, you cannot edit your own. I'm sorry, scratch that, reverse it. You can only edit your own. So if, let's say, this Josh Machino person had a negative review about how they didn't get their OTC card, you could encourage them after the solution has run its course. You could encourage them to go, hey, you can edit that and leave directions on how to edit the post and say, hey, could you just let the people know that I did end up solving your problem and you're very satisfied with the solution. They can edit it and put that in there. And then you can also, or you could respond and be like, hey, I was so glad that I was able to solve that problem for you. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention, so on and so forth. You use the same steps that I had detailed above in the previous portion. So some businesses will buy reviews or write fake ones. Honestly, it's not worth it to me to do that. Most people can kind of tell when they're fake. Like this one here, then I Google fake reviews, is from Dashing Fencing. Or Google sniffs them out and removes them for you. If Google knows for a fact that it's a bot, it will remove it for you. I wouldn't say that doesn't mean, I would still, if you think it's a bot, report it, obviously, but Google oftentimes will be able to tell if there's a bot and take it off on your behalf. Also keep in mind that buying reviews or soliciting for reviews not in earnest is against their policy. And if they feel that you're doing that, they can remove them. So just keep that in mind. You might spend money for nothing. All right. So that brings us to just about the end of our show here. So if you're going to take anything away from the time you spent here with me today, these are the things that I would focus on. I would address reviews publicly, apologize privately, solve the problems quickly and accurately, and then keep others in the loop. Maybe I'd add into making sure you're always encouraging and looking for and striving for those positive reviews to keep the negative reviews kind of at a minimum. So that's my show. Again, I'm Chelsea Smith. Thank you so much for spending some time here with me today.